Hi everyone, and welcome to the webinar on metadata for official statistics. Just give a few minutes for other colleagues to join and we will start. Thank you so much. Okay, it's time to start. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone joining us from the different parts of the world. My name is Martina De Saverio. I work as an associate expert in statistics at the United Nations Statistics Division. And it's a pleasure for me to welcome you on behalf of UNSD to this webinar on metadata for official statistics. So before we dive into the discussions, I would like to mention some housekeeping rules to ensure a smooth session. So please keep your microphones muted during the presentations to avoid all the background noise. And if you have questions, you can use the chat or the Q&A function in the upper side of the screen. We will have a dedicated Q&A session at the end, so you will be able to raise your hand and speak directly, and we will be able to address all your questions. This webinar is being recorded, and all the presentations will be made available for future reference, so you will have it. And just one thing. Yes, just a reminder to keep your microphones closed. Yeah, unfortunately, we don't have interpretation, so please don't change the spoken language of the meeting. It's just the language of the transcript. So this webinar has been organized within the framework of the Collaborative on Administrative Data. Many of you are already familiar with this initiative, so I won't spend much time on it. The collaborative is a multi-stakeholder collaborative of countries and regional international organizations with the aim at strengthening the capacity of countries to use the administrative data for statistical purposes. The CAD focus on simple and ready-to-implement solutions that address the priority gaps identified by its members, and also contributes to raise awareness about the benefits of admin data and facilitates collaboration by sharing resources, best practices, experience like this webinar, or tools. Currently, the CAD includes mainly NSOs from countries, but can also involve administrative data owners or international and regional organizations. Beside the collaborative, this work and this webinar would not have been possible without the collaboration with the Data for Now initiative. Data for Now is a global initiative which supports countries in improving the availability, timeliness, and the disaggregation of data through the use of innovative sources, methods, and technologies to fill critical data gaps and for sustainable development. The initiative is co-led by 5 partners, the United Nations Statistics Division, UNDP, the World Bank, the Global Partnership for Sustainable Development, and the Sustainable Development Solution Network. And it's guided by key data, work approach, and outcome-oriented principles that I would say that align closely with today's discussion. The main principle is that the priorities are always identified by countries, and this ensures that all the efforts are context-specific and aligned with the national priorities. So by putting the countries and specifically the NSO in the lead, this initiative fosters sustainability, ownership, and also long-term impact. One of the needs raised by the CAB members in the last years was the demand for more practical guidance on metadata. So countries around the world have made progress in developing metadata systems, but challenges on how to best organize, manage, compile, leverage metadata still remain. So in response to this, UNSD, within the framework of the collaborative on administrative data and Data for Now, is developing a metadata guidance to provide practical guidance and also real-world insights. And this will support countries in working with the data and metadata. So this metadata guidance, as I said, is practical. So we will start with simple examples and small steps to then move to more advanced steps. So there is this transition from traditional way of documenting metadata to a more advanced metadata system. There will be also guidance on how to engage with the NSS around metadata. But also always with these small steps. So you can start piloting with one institutions and then expand to others. There will be country cases through the guidance, and the cases will help also in guiding for different levels of maturity. So for a light, intermediate, and advanced metadata system. Building upon the discussions we had with countries around the metadata guidance, we decided to organize this webinar to facilitate the sharing of experiences and the best practices in this field. So this webinar has been, as I said, organized as a platform for experience exchange. So we'll enable the producers of official statistics from the different countries to share best practices and learn from one another. The wider goal is, of course, strengthening the metadata management and improving official statistics. So through the country experiences, in this case, Mexico, South Africa, and Italy, you will have the possibility to gain insight into how countries are making efforts in enhancing their metadata practices. And you can also identify opportunities for connection and collaboration. So the specific objectives of this webinar are to highlight the importance and the role of metadata, to present the opportunities in implementing comprehensive metadata systems, and also to promote global collaboration and exchange. Now I hand over to my colleague Charlotte, who will give you an overview of the agenda for today. Over to you, Charlotte. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Martina. So my name is Charlotte Hansen, and I work as a consultant on the Data for Now initiative. And I'm also engaged in the drafting of the metadata guidance that Martina was just informing you about. And I will be the moderator of today's webinar. So today we have 3 speakers from the national statistical offices in Mexico, South Africa, and Italy to share experience in working with and managing metadata. So first, we will hear from Marco from INEGI in Mexico on INEGI's metadata management strategy and their new metadata integrator system. Then we will hear from Joseph from Statistics South Africa, inform us about how metadata is linked with quality and statistical business processes and how they manage metadata. And then finally, Mauro from Italy will, from ISTAT in Italy, will inform us about ISTAT's new metadata system and their main principles of governance. And after the three presentations, we will have time for a Q&A session. So please have your questions ready by then. You can either ask your questions in plenary or you can use the chat or the Q&A function. So with this, I will now pass on to Marco, who is the Deputy Director of Metadata Management in INEGI in Mexico. So Marco, over to you. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you, Charlotte.
Marco, sorry, I think we lost your presentation.
Okay. Give me a minute, please.
Yeah.
I can put it on the screen for you if it's useful.
Yes. Can you see the screen?
No. Oh,
No,
let's
but
see.
I'm sharing it. Let me know if you can see it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, now it's there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Charlotte. Thank you, Martina. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for this opportunity to share with you our experience on metadata documentation of statistical and geographic information. Let's start talking about the different standards that we use in INEGI as a reference for metadata documentation. Currently, inside the National Statistical and Geographic Information System, or National Statistical System in Mexico, there coexist different technical standards to regulate metadata documentation. Each one is based on international standard and has different scopes. These metadata standards have been implemented at INEGI 10 years ago, more or less. And their use is mandatory for all producers of strategic, statistical, and geographic information. For example, the version of codebook version of DTI is used to prepare reference metadata of censuses, surveys, and administrative registers, as well to document structural metadata of databases at the microdata level. In addition, to facilitate search and query of databases in open data formats, we use the Data Catalog Vocabulary Standard, the CAT, for datasets in open data format. In the other hand, an ISO standard, in this case ISO 19115, is used to define the metadata schema to describe your spatial datasets. The implementation of these current technical standards has made it possible that metadata contributes to the use and understanding of statistical and geographic information. But however, due to diversity of statistical methods and metadata standards, metadata management has been implemented at disjointedly way for each kind of production process. These situations hinders the availability of a consolidated metadata repository. Then we, for our point of view, the first step to conduct a comprehensive metadata management was adapt a metadata strategy that fits the purpose of our organization. Then, as part of the adoption of the GSVPM in INEGI, we proposed that metadata management strategy be implemented throughout the entire of data lifecycle, and that it could be supported by the coexistence of different metadata standards. In this context, currently, 3 main activities are underway to support the metadata management strategy, and with the proposed to ensure interoperability between the different systems and services for metadata consumption. First, updating of legal framework, including the definition of basic set of metadata that allows to describe the conceptual, methodological, and quality characteristics of the different production process. Also, we are development of a metadata management toolkit that systematizes its capture, sharing, storing, and dissemination. And as a result of this, the creation of an integrated metadata base from which the different metadata system can be fed. Sorry. Okay. As a part of the data governance framework, this new technical standard extends its purpose and scope, establishing provisions for the homogeneous and structured documentation of any kind of production process, including surveys, administrative data process, national accounts, price indexes, and geographic information. This core of metadata allows describe data lifecycle under the approach of GSVPM. We have a core of reference metadata and a set of metadata for data sets for different kind of production process. In this way, this technical standard will be consolidated as the general framework to which other structural metadata specification will be incorporated to document different types of datasets and products generated by the production process conducted by INEGI. Okay, as a part of metadata management toolkit, we are developing a metadata integrator system that includes a set of services and applications that will allow the systematization of metadata capture, transfer, storage, and dissemination. This system is composed of 5 modules that will be allow satisfies institutional metadata needs, manage metadata workflows, design and maintenance of metadata templates for different metadata specification according to the purpose and scope of each one, and promote interoperability between the different data and metadata systems. It's also important to mention that the information model of the metadata integrator system is based on the identification, definition, and relationship of concept codes and metadata schemes with like another information model of SDMX. Now, what are the main challenges that INEGI must address to implement an effective metadata management? In this context, first we implement a data and metadata modeling that allows identify the phases and sub-process in which metadata are generated, as well the flows and responsibility parties of this capture, use, and storage. In the same way, we have to develop to support the management of entire data lifecycle. We need to develop tools to support this entire data lifecycle in the framework of this VPN. We also need to design metadata schemas for paradata and unstructured data sets. This in order to attend the metadata management needs in the context of a new data ecosystem. And last but not least, we need to get that metadata initiatives cover all methods of data collection and ensure that data and metadata shall be available under a single data catalog. This, for us, these are the 5 principal challenges to address that we must address to implement an effective metadata management. It's all. We hope that this very brief description of what we are doing will contribute to identified opportunities and collaboration on metadata management for the official statistics. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sorry, thank you very much, Marco. It was very interesting to see. So we will now move on to our next presenter, who is Joseph from Statistics South Africa. And Joseph is the Chief Director of Statistical Standards. So Joseph, over to you now.
Thank you very much, and good morning, good afternoon, everyone. And we really want to appreciate the UN for giving us this opportunity to share our experiences on metadata. I will go straight, I will mute myself here, and I'll go straight to the presentation. Okay. These are the few topics that will take you through, and in brief, is the background. We'll give the metadata management definitional framework, some of the governance that control how we do things, and then we will share a bit on our repository that store the metadata, as well as the linkage between our quality management tool, the statistical standards, and the statistical business process, and a few of the examples on the reporting of the metadata. But just to start, from our side, we are somehow regulated. We do things based on the legal framework. We do have the act in our statistics that regulate us and mandate our Statistician General to formulate the quality criteria and establish standards, classification, and procedure for statistics. And through that, there is a South African Statistical Quality Assessment Framework, we call it SASCAF. And this is a framework that give or assist the Secretary General to evaluate the quality of statistics produced by the entities within the national statistics system. It's also a tool to improve the quality of the statistic production system. It centralizes on metadata documents that support production of statistics. When we come to the definitional metadata, we all know that data is collected to model or describe the real world or imaginary world, but the assumptions and limitation must be fully documented to prevent misuse of data. In that case, the availability and management of metadata is a core requirement for the product disseminated by Statistics South Africa. We then define metadata, of course, as data about data. We are talking about the conceptual metadata, the operational metadata, the system metadata, procedural metadata, and dataset metadata. Just to give you a clue regarding the conceptual metadata, is what Marco was talking about as well. We talk about the metadata that refer sometimes as the reference metadata. We are talking about the likes of the concept and definition, the classification, some of them of which we are adopted from international organization. And then you then move to the other sets of metadata that we'll talk about. And all these type of metadata are required to be captured and stored in the metadata store in every phase of the generic statistical business process model. We then have to capture the metadata. Of course, when we do these things, we are regulated. We don't just do things. We are regulated. There are policies that we have in the organization that ensure that these things are done in a right way. You can see we have the policy on metadata management. And in that policy, one of the requirement or clause on that policy is saying that all metadata or related metadata shall be stored in the metadata store before any output data set or product can be published. And we also have policies that talk to the standards development, implementation, and management. Also say all standards shall be stored in the same repository, which shall be made available and accessed to all staff and other users. And lastly, we have another policy that talk about informing user of data quality. Say all quality metadata shall be stored in the organization central metadata repository, and the quality reports shall be made available and accessible to all users. In all of this policy, for example, the policy on metadata management, there are templates that has been regulated that ensure that whatsoever we capture metadata, we follow that template. And of course, this template is compatible with other standards, the Doubling Core initiative, and of course, we try to also to align with SDMX as well when we standardize these templates. This is the repository that I'm talking about, and you can see is an in-house developed system, and it have the functionality to host the statistical standards, the classification, the policies, definitional metadata, and any other typical metadata. It also has the functionality that you will see later that survey or production area, they're able to capture metadata live throughout from the system. The central metadata repository is the central storage from our side for statistical standards and metadata, which enable registration of and access to authoritative and reliable statistical standards and reporting of metadata. Statistical standards and metadata are sourced from this central place. Production area or survey area capture metadata, of course, directly from the system. This is the template that I talk about, and just in brief, a shortened version of this template is the survey metadata template. Is enable survey area to capture their metadata into the system. It has all the functionality and aspect of the statistical value chain that is required when you capture metadata, irrespective of the type of survey, whether it's a census, whether it's a sample survey or administrative data source as well. They're all applicable for this template. The other template is the one that is for capturing quality metadata. In terms of the framework that I talk about, it has all the dimension of the framework. We do have 9 quality dimension in that framework, and then the template is there to capture the metadata according to that template. And then once you have that in place, what you see now is that on the left-hand side, from my side, is the framework that I talk about, the quality assessment framework that has the quality dimension, quality indicator, and quality standards. On the other side, we know is the JSBPM framework, or the value chain that we always follow when we do our business. You see what we are trying to do here. We are trying to link the quality framework and the GSBPM, and to ensure that when you are producing statistics in between, you won't even have noticed that you are indeed have to comply with the quality requirements. All is embedded by how do you do that? The standards that has been developed, some are in-house developed standards. They are interlinked between the two frameworks, and they are able to say, once you adhere to those standards, you are able to comply with both type of framework. You can see the quality management and metadata management, that those templates that I talk about, once you capture them across the entire value chain, therefore your quality or the metadata will be documented accordingly. That's the framework. But that also, it assists when we have to move further, especially for the user and those that conduct the quality assessment, to evaluate the quality of the statistics or the product that we produce. The metadata that we have captured here, then they will assist area that are responsible to conduct monitoring and evaluation of our statistical product. They largely depend on the metadata that we have produced, as well as those that will do quality assessment and training the entities of the NSS in terms of the adherence to quality. Metadata play a key role, as well as in the center when the production area or the survey area are developing or managing their day-to-day type of process. When they document, then the metadata is play a key role in this regard, and that will assist at the end. On top there, you see it assists that when we publish this metadata, user will know that this product indeed either is fit for use or fit for purpose or not. Just example of some definitional metadata that you will source from the system. You can see you have concept and definitions that you will source, and this concept and definition, of course, there will be, when survey area are running their daily process, this will be sourced from the system automatically and embedded into the capturing of metadata with easy. those concepts and definitions that are specific for that project. These are now, you can see, you also have some question, the variables and the response category. These are sourced from the system, but they are used by the survey area when they run their daily business. It makes life so easy for them when they run their daily business. And you see, when you have the central metadata repository and you do this according to the standardized manner, this will able directly to link to other systems in terms of the metadata that you produce. It will automatically link to the SASCAF or the quality assessment framework. It will link to the monitoring and evaluation tools. It will link to the dissemination tool. It will link to the tool like when you your data collection instrument, your questionnaire. All these tools will interlink with the metadata that is captured in the central metadata repository. And adhering to the standards and the metadata, we always say it ensures that information is collected once and shared across a wide spectrum of users. And the use of statistical standards and metadata, this is to model the statistical process to improve efficiency and the activity that support the statistical production. I thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Joseph, for this walkthrough. It was very interesting. So now we will move on to our third presenter. So next is Mauro, who is in charge of the development of the new metadata system in ISTAT, Italy. So Mauro, over to you.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for the invitation to be here and to present our system that actually is in development. Sorry, I go to the beginning. Here, oops. And okay, here we are. And let me put it in the presentation mode. So we are in Italy. We have experience about metadata since a long time ago. I would say that some of the systems were developed in the 90s, and I start from the experience in the past, as a matter of fact. Here you can see that there are 3 different silos that were developed independently in our institute. The part on referential metadata, that contains very detailed information about the statistical processes. Structural metadata, it's about the information on the data set that we produce along all the process. And there is also another small part of it that deals with terminology. We have a glossary with all the semantics and everything about the definition. The problem, as I was telling you before, is that these 3 systems were quite independent one from the other. Actually, some of them are also very old, and so it was necessary to have redevelopment of some of the tools that we have got there. And the most important thing is that they share a lot of information that actually is stored independently in the free system. And furthermore, there are parts of new processes, like the one based on registers and so on, that are not were not contemplated, were not considered in the previous systems that we had before. And especially about the description of processes, we really look forward to have information at a very detailed level, because our ambition is to have a system that can give us information on how to replicate, if we want, a process, and how to conduct it again, just changing the inputs that we have got along the process itself. So the idea was to build again a new system that actually had all the 3 components all together, and concept now, the objective is to have these three parts that work together and share all that should be shared by the three different modules of the system. Now, as you can see here, there are two main elements. And a third element, which is kind of output of it. The two main elements are the referential metadata that contains especially the part on the list of all the different statistical processes that our institute conducts, and the part on terminology, that is the different terms that should be used in order to describe the data along the process. So structural metadata is a kind of product that we have from these two inputs, because actually we have the creation of data set along the replication of each different process, and we should use the terms in our semantic repository, in what has been called also the metadata catalog. As an example, for instance, the term unemployed, we have it in our new glossary, with its definition, and it is used in one of the statistical processes that we have got. One of the statistical programs, the Lab of Work survey, for instance, and we use it in one specific edition of this element, and we use it for disseminating data about unemployment, and where we use that term again. Now, in this case, this term has been used as for a specific statistical purpose in order to describe the population over which the indicator in the dissemination phase has been produced. But as a matter of fact, this term is used also elsewhere, for instance, as a category in a classification. And as a matter of fact, the term is unique. The uses in our statistical system can be many in different products, and so we try to manage all these things. Now, what have we done? We have used as much as possible, as my colleagues have told before, the standards that we have got up to now. Let's refer again to the different modules: terminology, referential metadata, and structural metadata. As far as referential metadata is concerned, we start, as a matter of fact, from the latest edition of GSBPM. And actually, we use it together with a new version of the Generic Statistical Information Model, GSIM. And we use in order to organize everything that is already inserted into the standard format of the quality products that are described in the SIMS 2.0, which is used in Europe. And actually, so we have used GSBPM, but GSIM has been used in order to have detail at the lower levels than the one described by sub-processes. In what way? In order to describe along the process, everything is about the process itself. So the input, the way we transform data along the process, and the output. As an example, consider this situation where we refer, as a matter of fact, to the business process GSBPM phase evaluate, and in particular to the sub-process conduct evaluation. Now, up to now, as you can see, there are four different other actions that are performed in these process steps. And as a matter of fact, the application identification is one of the steps that we are going to produce there. So the ambition is to describe each one of these elements. The application identification is one of them, in order to identify what kind of rules we have actually implemented going into the software itself. And so we can describe it more in detail. And we have already done this, for instance, by means of the use of those that make use of the R software for managing data. when we use R Markdown and describing step by step what we implement. The other part of the system is about terminology. So in line with the ISOs that are described here, we actually have managed each term in terms of a couple that should be always together. On one end, there is the lemma, the word itself, and its definition, because we know that each word can have, unluckily, also in statistics, as a matter of fact, many definitions according to a statistical process that we have got. So the combination of lemma and definition is going to give us information about what's going on about the term. So we don't want just to manage this kind of a new glossary with these elements, but also to identify the relationships between the different terms in order to, for instance, consider the polysemy, the terms that have the same lemma but different definitions, the synonyms, and so on. And so we are going to have not only a centralized glossary, but also a kind of controlled vocabulary that we can use extensively along all the different data production processes that we have got in our institute. The last thing I want to say is about the structural metadata. As a matter of fact, the standard that we have adopted, we have considered many concepts from a generic statistical information model here, like the terms, the typical statistical terms like variable, unit type, universe, population, and so on. And we have used them in order to describe the data sets that are produced along all the process as input and then are produced in the different steps up to the last step of the process itself. We have considered different approaches in order to use these terms for micro or macro data set. We have paid a lot of attention to the measure in both the data sets, because when we have got a micro data set, as a matter of fact, we have got units on which we are going to measure variables usually, while on the macro data sets, we are going to measure statistical indicators aggregates that have a composition of metadata that have been used before in the process itself. And the last thing I want to say is about two principles that we have adopted in the construction of this system. First of all, that the process, the term is defined by one of the people working in the data production process, not but the centralized people, the people that works in the centralized metadata system, and is adopted also in other data production processes, not only the one that the responsible for that metadata has given the definition. As a matter of fact, people working centrally have performed their work, especially in order to update, standardize, harmonize, to look at the new definition and see if everything can be combined, usually also establishing tables between the different data production processes managers in order to agree on the possible changes or new definitions that we are going to use in our system. So this is the end of my talk. I'm sorry if I've taken too many minutes, and thank you again for being here.
Great. Thank you very much, Mauro. Another very interesting presentation. So now we will move to the Q&A session. So you're welcome to raise your hand if you would like to ask a question in plenary to our presenters. And you're also welcome to write your questions in either the chat or the Q&A function. Are there any questions from anyone? If not at the moment, while maybe you're thinking about what to ask, maybe I can start with asking a question. So this is maybe more around the culture of working with metadata, because we often see that compiling metadata is not a favorite task of statisticians. So I was wondering if you could say a little bit about how your organization has worked with changing the mindset of statisticians to appreciate the work on metadata, because you have quite advanced systems now. So, and it's a requirement to do. So I was wondering, in that transition process, how have you worked with that?
If you want, I can give you a first answer to this question.
Yes, please, Mauro.
Because probably this is common to many different countries. There is a very long tradition of stovepipes way to produce data in our institutes according to the different data production process. So anyone involved in one data production process was interested just in its own metadata without looking at what was happening in the other data production processes. And we started with the so-called harmonization tables a few years ago. I mean, at least 8 years ago, we started with social variables. Our objective was we were changing our census. We were using more and more data also from the other social surveys and from administrative archives and so on. And so there was really a need in order, from all the people to establish a common vocabulary on the concepts that were characterized by that characterizes these data production processes. And I remember how happy we were in understanding the slightly difference in meaning that they have got, but there was also a justification for the differences in numbers that they usually have got and so on. We were not used to talk one with the other. That's the point. And once we realized what were the differences, also a way to establish a bridge, a connection, in order to get also figures on the common variables were established. In some cases, there were also some misinterpretations given by, or different interpretations on the law given by two different data production processes. I remember that there was a kind of title, of education title, that actually was not used by many Italians, but the government established those titles in order to improve the number of people with a university degree, in order to give more also a technical point, not just a theoretical or high level, but also a technical advanced title for those kind of students. And some other data production processes did not include those kind of element among the people with a university degree, but with a lower level of degree. So we realized about this kind of misinterpretation about the law, just confronting and being in the table and talking together. And so we are going to do again and to continue at a large level these kind of meetings. Anytime now, as far as the core variables are concerned, we now have established a common idea on what's going on. But we are going to do this anytime there is a change, a modification, a need to have an additional metadata and so on. And this is quite appreciated, I mean, by the people working with the data production process. So sometimes there is the need to help, I would say, a relationship with data producers. The necessity thing is to give them the responsibility. I always say, I don't know anything. Let me astonish about what's going on what's the interpretation about your element. And secondly, don't leave your term, your lemma, your word alone. Give always a definition to that in order to understand what's going on. Otherwise, people tend to use it however they want.
Yeah, very, very true. Great. Thank you so much, Mauro, for this explanation. I think we have a question from Victor. So over to you, Victor, if you can unmute yourself, please.
Yes, my question is to a representative from South Africa. He made mention of quality assessment framework, and I want to find out whether in their country, as per US Statistics Division, championing the use of data quality assurance framework, if they have the assurance framework, what is the difference between the assessment framework and then the data quality assurance framework, if they have? That's what I want to know. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Victor. So Joseph, this was a question to you.
Thank you very much for the question, Victor. Yes, we do have a quality assessment framework, and it's not different from any other framework, the UN one and other framework, and especially because when that framework was developed some years back, we had a case study across the globe to see what others, the IMF and other, what do they have in terms of the quality assessment framework. It differs with the naming. Sometimes they will call, some people call quality assurance framework, some quality assessment framework, but the content of the framework, what is entailed, is what you can see the different. I think perhaps maybe if you really want more detail, of course, Charlotte, what you have said, we can still share and we can talk more about this framework even outside from this sitting. Yeah, but quickly also to tap on another one, the question that you asked earlier, just a brief. And we from Statistics South Africa, we never escape from the issue of statistician of capturing metadata. Is always be, perhaps maybe it's a waste of time. Maybe I'll look at this at the end when I'm done with my report or my product. Then I will remember, I will capture it. But by the time they'll do that, because of the model of how we run our statistical products, they have already forgotten about most of the metadata that they should have captured. But to sum up, what we have done also to avoid the stovepipe type of work within the organization, we then, as I presented, we have policies that govern to say these are the policies that you will follow to ensure that they will capture metadata. But what is important, if you look at my slide of the triangle, is the slide that also push them to the direction to appreciate the capturing of metadata, because when they are subjecting their product Victor to the quality assessment framework and other framework and the monitoring and evaluation process, the people who are sitting there, they will then request them about the metadata and to provide standardized type of metadata to do the assessment and other monitoring. Therefore, now they are now all aligned to capture their metadata so that it become much easier as well when they are subjected to this assessment framework, as well as when they disseminate their product. It's much easier for them to accompany their product with metadata that is standardized. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Joseph, for answering both questions. Very good additions. We also have a question in the Q&A from Tinley in Bhutan, asking about if you have metadata for administrative data, and their metadata system are the same as those you have for the from the survey data. So the question is, do you have a metadata system that differs between whether it's administrative data or survey data, or is it the same metadata system you use?
Well, in my case, in Italy, the data coming from administrations are stored in a different part, let's say. They are outside the data production process. They should be, in some sense, worked in order to get into the statistical process itself. So we actually get data and the metadata, and we store it, but elsewhere with respect to where we used to manage data and metadata for the statistical processes. This means that, for instance, there is not a check and harmonization of metadata, of data collected from administrative data when they arrive in our institute. This kind of work is done once the administrative data is used with inside a statistical process, and so in that case metadata is understood, possibly modified and harmonized with the one we use in our institute, and so on. So at the same time, I should say that ISTAT is heading an initiative with the public administrations that produce data in order to make the data interoperable. And for this reason, we are working on a common vocabulary that is going to be shared with all the administrations. And so we hope that the result of this work will consist also in the production of data from administrations that arrive in our institute already harmonized as much as possible. But I mean, we have just begun to do this kind of job. So this is a different job. I mean, as far as at the moment, metadata and data are stored in the data collection department where we get all this data and are managed in a different part of it. We need to harmonize them and to work on them.
Okay, thank you, Mauro. Joseph or Marco, do you want to add something here before we move to the next question?
Thank you, Charlotte. From us, it's not different from what Marco has just indicated. I think it's the same. And what I can just add is that from our side, with the new amended act that I cited, and it opened up that we will then now have to look at how we standardize the metadata from admin records, admin system. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we have a question from Tashi. Over to you. Please unmute yourself.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening from Bhutan. I do not have a question per se, but I just wanted to clarify the confusion I think we had with the previous speakers between the quality assessment and the quality assurance framework. So to me, how I understand this thing is quality assurance framework is something that is being put in place to assure that there's a quality in the data, metadata that is being maintained or data that is being generated by data holders. On the other hand, assessment to me would mean, okay, then you assess whether the data holder has really made use of the assurance that has been put in place. For example, like UNSD, they have come up with the NCAF National Quality Assurance Framework for the administrative data, which talks basically on the relevance, periodicity, and all these things, right? And now when we, for example, in Bhutan, we also do this assessment. And now when we do the assessment, we go to some sectors, the data holders in the ministries, and then we try to assess their data, whether they have really followed the assurance that that has been put in place. So, for instance, here we are selecting some agencies. Let's say, for example, Ministry of Health, and with regard to the Ministry of Health, we make use of the assessment framework developed by UNSD, which is in the Excel format. So we go to the agency, we like sit with the agency, and then we just run through the questionnaire, the content which talks about whether they have the mandate to collect data, or whether how do they define each variables. So I think this is where how I understand the data assessment and how I understand the data quality assurance framework. So I think the previous speaker from South Africa, Mr. Joseph, I think did mention that they are one in the same thing. It's the matter of just use of words, but I think to me, they are two different things. This is how I understand. Yeah, I just wanted to share this here. And I think with regard to how in Bhutan, how we practice the metadata, I think my colleague Tilne, I think he has raised a very good question, and I think we also did receive a very good response from the two speakers. Thank you very much.
Okay, Tashi, thank you so much for your contribution here on the quality aspect as well. So we have a question now from Lu Jan. Over to you. Please unmute yourself.
Thank you, Charlotte. It's only a comment
Jose.
about the...
Sorry, I couldn't see your full name, Jose.
Thank you, Charlotte. It's only a comment about the metadata management of administrative record at INEGI, okay? At INEGI, our current metadata toolkit support the creation, editing, and publication of census, survey, and administrative record. Maybe the most of you are familiar with the Nestor application provided by the World Bank, and we use for dissemination the toolkit of NEDA initiative. As Marco Gutierrez said, soon we will use the metadata integrator system that allow us support also the national accounts, price indexes, and geographical information. Thank you very much, Charlotte.
Thank you, Jose, for the addition here. A very good contribution. I think you can say maybe on the distinction between metadata from administrative data sources and survey data. I guess also sometimes it depends on the type of metadata we talk about, because I guess for reference metadata would sometimes be the same, at least the same metadata objects you have to describe, whether irrespectively of the data source. All right, are there any more questions before we close? We're getting close to the end now, I can see.
There is a question in the Q&A, Charlotte.
Okay, I haven't, okay. But it's about the quality assurance framework, right? I think we covered that.
There is a question for Mexico.
Yes, okay, I see here, yeah.
I can read it for you if it's easier.
Yes, please.
So it's a question for Mexico. The question is, can you please expand on how do you plan to address your challenges around building tools to support data lifecycle management for effective collection and use of metadata? How are your planning to build a centralized or decentralized metadata management architecture, and why? Yes, this question is from Kirti Tandel from the Office for National Statistics UK.
Okay. Marco, do you like that I help with this answer?
Yes, please go ahead, Jose.
Thank you. A minute.
Yeah.
One minute, please.
We can hear you, Jose.
Thank you, Charlotte. Marco, could you please share the slide with the metadata management strategy, please? I couldn't share my screen.
Sure, please.
Just write this. Thank you very much. Okay, just right now, we are developing a toolkit that will help the production process. That system will align to the life cycle of the business process and will help to the production areas to develop their activities. This system will interoperate with the integrated metadata system and will store the data and the metadata that support the functionality of a business process driven by metadata. So right now, we will use a traditional way to capture the metadata by formularies that can get and validate the information. But just right now, we are developing the system that will support the conceptual design of the process like surveys and censuses. This toolkit will interconnect with the integrated management system and share with this system all the information about the variable definition, the conceptual framework, and also the definition of the final indicator. And in a progressive way, we will include the support of activities of the rest of phase and sub-process of GSBPM. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jose, for clarifying this. Sorry, I was unmuted. I was muted. So sorry. So we're about to close the webinar. So before we do so, I would like to pass on to Fael Ahmed, who is managing the Data for Now initiative at the UN Statistics Division, for some closing remarks. So Fael, over to you.
Thank you so much, Charlotte, and thank you so much to the speakers and our colleagues from South Africa, Mexico, and Italy for sharing your experiences with what looks like a very advanced metadata systems. But just to say that even our colleagues who don't have a advanced metadata system in your countries, that's okay. We can start with developing those metadata systems, and any metadata is better than no metadata. And I would just like to emphasize on the importance of metadata, that it's very important for our users to understand and interpret and use the statistics that are being produced. And metadata really describes and provides the basis of using those statistics. as it builds a solid foundation on what lies behind the data or statistics that is produced for use. And I think the collaborative of administrative, the admin data as well as Data for Now has been working with many countries to share examples such as we heard today from Mexico, South Africa, and Italy to inspire you to also take these experiences forward in your countries. And we will have these presentations and materials also available on the website, also with the metadata guidance coming up that Martina shared will also provide a good starting point, or let's say to help you advance the metadata systems in your countries. So thank you very much for your time, and I'm very happy to hear all the experiences shared by our colleagues here, and wish you a great day in the evening. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you
Thank
very
you,
much.
everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.